Well, here we are, part 3. Last video of this series, but certainly not the last video I plan to make. Thank you all for your continued support. Now, let's do this. Glitchtrap/Burntrap and their connection to Vanny/Vanessa. And unlike the last couple videos, this one won't have huge summaries of stories from the books. I'm still in the process of reading the novels, mostly the Frights novels. I'm on the last of the Tales books right now, with my friend Dana. And as far as I'm aware, I only know that there's a Glitchtrap-like entity in the story Prankster. And for the sake of my own sanity, I'm ignoring In the Flesh. But if you want to hear someone talk about it and what could have been a better alternative story, I recommend Not Real Name Not At All's video right here. Anyway, let's get to what we're here for. But first, a quick recap. In part 1, I told you all about the FNAF verse, how everything is canon in some shapes or form across multiple universes, as well as Gregory and his alternative identities of GGY and Patient 46. Part 2 was focused almost exclusively on the Mimic's backstory, and what led to his appearance in Ruin.
How did I get here?
However, if you recall, I did touch on Glitchtrap a bit there as well, mostly in terms of him also being a mimic, but a different mimic, due to how the books confirm the existence of multiple mimic endos, which I connected to possibly being the toy animatronics Model 2 endos, as they're the only game-verse models that we know of to get entirely decommissioned and scrapped the same way the mimic line was. Hence, I took offense to Matpat talking during his playthrough of Ruin as though the OG mimic is the sudden mastermind behind everything.
She also has like a weird shadow on her face. Like her eyes are kind of like shadowed, like she might still be possessed or something. That is weird. Well, the fact, okay, so what that tells me, right, is that is Vanessa falling victim to the mimic program. I think.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
That ending is telling us we are now victims of the mimic as well. We are now part of, like, that's why Vanessa isn't moving, maybe. Maybe Vanessa is also, she's like, I'm part of this. I've been absorbed into the network, or I am also a mindless husk now. And so you have evil Gregory, evil Helpy being like, hey, welcome to the hill, have ice cream with us, whatever. But, and we've all just been corrupted. Vanessa's there, and now we are also with Vanessa.
And of course, there's that theory overtaking Freda about hive mind mimic, as though Glitchtrap never happened. I'm personally against it, and as someone pointed out in the comments of part 2, the Glamrock endos all seem to be running on Mimic 1 programming as well from what we see in the moon tunnels. That's what I call the whole section of the game when you enter the storage facility with all the endos because of all the moon and daycare imagery.
Look, there's like 2 moon plushies. Just...
And the mural again.
Mm-hmm. Like, this whole place is like screaming moon. And like, nobody cares except me.
And me.
And
I have three moon plushies in this one room.
3 moon plushies!
In the moon tunnels, we see instructional posters explaining proper behaviors the endos are meant to imitate or mimic! Only someone has tampered with the signs with purple paint. You see where I'm going with this? If the Mimic program is a hive mind, why did the OG Mimic have to escape specifically in order for it to live its life outside? Anyway, that's an entirely separate video. Back to the recap. Multiple Mimics were created after Fazbear Entertainment managed to recover and extract the base code out of the OG Mimic's head. And then the entire Mimic line was scrapped, but with the intent of their parts being reused and repurposed. And eventually, some of those circuit boards containing the Mimic 1 AI were sent to the company developing the VR game, where the development team was advised to take the code and implement it into the game to reduce the amount of pathfinding they would have to program themselves to basically nothing.
The drawers have been emptied out. Someone was here. I don't think it was spring cleaning either. No, there was plastic on the floor. Someone was definitely here during the night. It had to have been the client. I mean, they sent us that stuff in the first place with no explanation, told us to scan it, said it would expedite the process so we wouldn't need to program any pathfinding ourselves. It was a budget thing, I guess. It was just junk. circuit boards and things like that. Looked pretty old. Somehow, though, there was usable code on some of it. It seemed to take hold by itself. Things started changing. But then, he started appearing. At least that's what Jeremy said.
So, Phasma Entertainment, when it came to the Mimic 1 code, knew what it was they were sending them. The only thing accidental would have been the hard drive that they sent someone in to take back with everything else in the dark of the night. But by then, everything they could scan or extract had been taken out of that old junk and put into the game. However, the Mimic AI that was scanned in was incomplete and broken. As Tape Girl stated, there was some usable code on the circuit boards. Not all of the code was. And it was the usable bits that took hold and integrated themselves into the game that led to the appearance of Glitchtrap within the system.
Booga, 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 booga!
Now, I'll be the first to admit that initially, before the concept of mimics existing in FNAF was even a thing, I was a firm believer that Glitchtrap was just some kind of digital backup of himself that Afton had scanned into some old computer chips and stuff like that, a la Soma brain scan technology somehow existing in the 90s or something.
All right, let me just get this out of the way. You are Simon Jarrett, correct?
Right.
Toronto, Canada, David Munchie. Born 1988, July 16th.
Right.
Latin Neugraph.
That was a fun day for
Good.
me.
All files in order.
Will this hurt?
It's just a scan. It'll hurt about as much as getting your picture taken.
Indians thought cameras would steal their souls.
Is that so? Well, let's hope they're wrong. Ready? Say cheese.
And hey, that very well could still be what's going on here. After all, we never did find out it was on that chip that Circus Baby tricked Michael into taking, since I severely doubt it was actually the good parts of her like she claimed. Ayo, editing Seth here. So, after rewatching some Let's Plays of Sister Location, as I plan on potentially recording my first actual playthrough of the game eventually on my own, I realized that we do know what happens with that chip, as Baby literally tells Michael what to do with it.
Put the card into your handheld device, and I can continue to speak to you.
It gets plugged into the hand unit afterwards, and that's how she communicates with him and leads him to the scooping room. So, her chip being a contender for where Glitchtrap came from doesn't necessarily work, especially if Mike still had that hand unit with him eventually during the Pizzeria Simulator events. And my main reason initially for thinking we didn't know what happened to it was because I had watched FUHNAFF's video a while back bringing up the chip and how it had contained a Mimic/Charlie virus.
After putting in the passcode, this happens.
A hatch should have opened. Take the card that you find inside. Now you must turn back.
Michael does what she says. He takes the chip containing the Charlie virus out of Baby.
Because with the way he edits his videos, he cut off a very important bit of information that's said after Circus Baby tells Michael to take the chip. Which is the very instance where she tells him to plug it into the hand device. So, FNAF is also wrong. The chip does not contain a Charlie virus. I don't think a Charlie virus even exists. It's just Baby's AI or whatever.
AI!
And the only thing we're dealing with right now is the Mimic program. And that chip isn't where Glitchtrap could have originated from now, since Circus Baby isn't even a Mimic, despite what FNAF might be claiming.
It was built to mimic Charlie, but it doesn't look human. Springlock suits can be put onto endoskeletons. And if this book is really hinting that Baby is a Springlock suit, that would line up with what we see at the end of Ruin. This is Baby's endoskeleton, just without all the wires and the shell that comes with the Springlock suit. The Baby Springlock suit would essentially be put onto this endoskeleton with the same eyes, teeth, and head shape as Baby. I think it's important to say that this endo has obviously swapped out a lot of its parts over time, and can also shapeshift to literally fit itself into any costume in the books. So if some physical features and the scale of the mimic don't 100% match, the endo can literally shapeshift. I don't know what to tell you.
Bruh, we've already seen what our endo looks like, and it doesn't look like that at all. And what do you mean underneath all the cables and wires? The entire endo is cables and wires, there's nothing else. You can't even argue that her Scrap Baby endo looks anything like it. At the very least, Springtrap and Scraptrap both still have human skulls underneath their costumes, and Roxy still looks like Roxy, even if everything is, like, slightly different underneath the hood, but I'm getting off track here. So we're just gonna completely skip over this tangent I had initially recorded regarding that particular option. Regardless of which it is, the motives Glitchtrap has would remain relatively the same, if not entirely the same. Anyway, under the assumption of it being a mimic, I will continue with my recap of what I said in part 2 as to why it is that it would believe itself to be Afton in the first place. But this is also where it stops being a recap, as I will go into a bit more detail here regarding my prior explanation. Before I had gone on my tangent about the other possibility of what Glitchtrap was, I had just finished explaining how the Mimic 1 AI that was scanned into the game was broken and incomplete. Personal memories like those of the OG Mimic's time with David and Edwin, if those ever happened to have been fully copied into each new Mimic when they created the mass-produced line anyway, would have gotten corrupted. One of the first things this incomplete Mimic would have been exposed to upon integration with the VR game would have been the character profiles and the entire premise behind the game. That it's a mockery of a series of indie games created about a serial killer child murderer that plagued Freddy Fazbear pizza restaurants. This Mimic then assimilated all that information it had available from the game files and personal logs of the development team into itself and potentially reached the conclusion, somehow, that it must be William Afton.
I always come back.
I mean, the OG Mimic in the book saw a table that was blocking the door it had just walked in the storage room through and immediately came to the conclusion it was a wall it had no means of getting through. So, a more fragmented Mimic AI believing itself to be someone it isn't because of an abundance of information it has on that person being the first thing readily available is not that unbelievable. Also, I feel I should bring up again another point from my last video. Glitchtrap was active long before the Pizzaplex's construction began and the reactivation of the OG Mimic, as illustrated by the Coming Soon teaser in the Dreadbear DLC's release featuring the first Mega Pizzaplex location being constructed. So, there's really no way for the OG Mimic to have received any information of Afton before that point if it really did witness the missing children's incident, and that's where its hiding and luring ML comes from, as many people believe, which, if you recall from my explaining the backstory of the Mimic in the last video, is not. The fan wiki even says that the OG Mimic somehow found Scraptrap and decided to put on his corpse and body, which makes no sense because, like I said last time, there is a human skull that completely replaces the Endo head on Burntrap. So where would that Endo skull have gone just to come back afterwards? It makes sense for the differences when it's something like Roxy, which just like, it's still her obviously. And then when you compare it to Scraptrap, Springtrap, and Burntrap, it's all supposed to be Afton in some shape or form because they're all Endos with human skulls and flesh bits. So how is this the Mimic? It just doesn't make any sense! Anyway, as you recall from part 2, none of that narrative makes any sense with what we know of the OG Mimic, because it was already doing the whole diving into costumes and luring people bit by itself with no external input long before ever being mass-produced by Fazbear Entertainment, and being exposed to other sources of information in the process. It's only the Glitchtrap Mimic that copies Afton's behavior in any sort of way. The claim that the Mimic's animations are even the same as Burntrap's isn't true either. I've looked at them. They don't look similar at all. The only thing remotely similar is the fact that in the PNG image of the Mimic, it has its left arm raised, the same way that Glitchtrap does when he's skulking around, but that could easily just be a reference to how the Mimic used to mime holding a stuffed animal by crooking its arm. So, I really have no idea how others are coming to the conclusion about Hive Mind Mimic and that Glitchtrap/Burntrap are the same exact entity as the Mimic. Anyway, now that I've gotten that rant out of the way, as a final reiteration, the OG Mimic and the Glitchtrap Mimic aren't the same beyond the base coding. Thus, the OG absolutely has no involvement in what happened during the events of Help Wanted. And just what was Glitchtrap attempting to accomplish in Help Wanted? Well, it thinks it's Afton. And what does Afton want? Or at least, what does the version of Afton from the game-verse as he's represented there want? He promised to put his youngest son back together. He asked his oldest son, Michael, to find his sister possessing Circus Baby and put her back together as well.
I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. But something is wrong.
The Glitchtrap mimic has embraced the narrative of a William Afton that is attempting to rebuild his broken family alongside achieving immortality through harvesting remnant, which the mimic likely learned the existence of via the emails exchanged between Fazbear Entertainment and the indie developer, as well as the team working for the AR game Special Delivery. However, Glitchtrap can't do any of that within the confines of the game, hence he wants out. And we know this is not just because of the gameplay of him taking over the player and switching places with or possessing them, depending on what ending you achieve. But we also have voice lines of Glitchtrap from the Princess Quest game and Help Wanted Mobile, which we again see in Security Breach. These voice lines were decoded by Entom SFM, who reversed and had the glitch effects removed so we can hear this. Afton's famous line of, "I always come back," is there, of course. But you heard what else he said, right? It wants back into the physical world because that's where the Glitchtrap mimic believes it belongs. And not only that, there's the potentiality in him seeing Vanessa, the first successful follower of Afton that we have on record in the Gameverse in this new Gameverse Plus era, as a replacement for Elizabeth, because Vanessa probably looks like how Glitchtrap, in the mindset of William, imagines Elizabeth would have looked if she had managed to grow up. And while I gave Matpat for his eye color thing in part 1, I'm about to pull something similar, but in a way that makes more logical sense than what he came up with.
This neural network controlling the Pizzaplex isn't just influenced by Afton. According to the books, the AI program was originally built to play with Charlie.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
A girl that wore a green wristband in order for the security puppet to protect her. That's why we see Tiger Rock, the book's manifestation of this same AI, with 2 colored eyes. It has evil and good data inside of it, and different animatronics are tapped into different amounts of that same code.
Matpat's argument was that green eyes represented good and Charlie, and I had countered that with, what about Elizabeth and Baby? Pointing out how Baby's eyes were blue before Elizabeth started possessing her. Because green eyes, in this case, do represent Elizabeth to a minor degree because, unlike Charlie, who canonically had brown eyes, Elizabeth's eyes were green. If you ignore all the inconsistencies shown in the Fourth Closet graphic novel adaptation, of course, because I have no idea how she goes from blonde with blue eyes to brown hair and brown eyes. Anyway, Elizabeth had green eyes, freckles, and strawberry blonde hair. Vanessa also has green eyes, and yes, freckles. She has them. You just gotta really look close at her model and have a decent PC when you're running the game. But she lacks the strawberry blonde hair. Ayo, editing Seth here with a minor interjection. She actually does count as a strawberry blonde according to Google results. Okay, bye. However, people with strawberry blonde hair, as they get older, will slowly start losing that red pigment until it's just a slight undertone, turning them essentially blonde. And hair dye exists, so... Anyway, these two similarities, well, they don't mean Vanessa is Elizabeth, because she isn't. I'm not saying she is. They do make her fit the criteria enough to be viewed by Glitchtrap as a candidate for her replacement in his reconstructed family, as she likely resembles what the real William Afton imagined her growing up to look like, as I mentioned before. And this is why she specifically was chosen to be pulled into Glitchtrap's master plan and take on the guise of Vanny. Also, there's a chance that Vanessa might just be his great-granddaughter or something because her last name starts with an A, and we know how FUHNAFF is. And it's not like Mike couldn't get some before he got scooped, or Mrs. Afton was pregnant before she left William. We don't know if she died or anything, we just know he died. Either way, it doesn't matter which it is, because he has a distinctly clear interest in knowing anything and everything about her in order to manipulate and reshape her to how he sees fit.
Good morning, Vanessa. Let's jump right in, shall we? I got a message last night about you. and I have to be honest, it was upsetting. Apparently, the IT department has put together a pretty lengthy report chronicling non-job-related communications that have been coming to your computer. The fact that you're still doing something obviously not work-related on the job is disturbing enough, but what bothers me about what I read is that the messages you're getting seem very manipulative in nature. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I get a lot of messages from friends. I like when Lewis writes to me. He's funny.
I'm not talking about Lewis. You know who I'm talking about. Why won't you open up about it? What you might not know is that this person who's been sending you messages has been hacking into your personal files too. These are the same files I have here. These files are full of details about your life. Do you know what that means?
I'm not in the tech department. I just type on the computers.
I know that. But what matters here is that this person who is contacting you knows a lot about you.
Lots of people know more than I do. Sometimes I need to listen.
How the Glitchtrap mimic does this can be explained in several ways. One is the good old manipulation and mind-breaking until she developed an alter that was willing to cooperate and follow Afton. And another is an explanation that we get out of the books. And I will say first that this is something that my friend Dana disagrees with me on, and I'm actually iffy if I believe in it myself or not, but I'm just bringing it up and putting it out there as a potential contender for what's going on here and what Glitchtrap's doing, just so we have all the options on the table. The explanation I'm referring to comes from the Monty Within from Tales from the Pizzaplex. In this story, a teenage boy named Kane gets a copy of Monty's AI out of a video game uploaded into his head, who ends up taking control of half his brain. And it's this story where Matpat's spiel of good and bad data came from, because this story is meant to explain to us how the Mimic ended up the way it did with its exposure to violence, leading to the warping of everything else it had previously learned thanks to Edwin. As the Monty Within is heavy with real-world psychology and brain studies regarding the right and left brain. However, as I said, I believe it explains how Vanny came to exist as an alter of Vanessa, considering how she appeared much later in life and was not a result of the trauma that Vanessa had endured as a child.
Hi, go ahead. Sit down.
I don't know you. What happened to...
Oh, we'll get to know each other in no time. I've read through all your files, so I feel like we've been talking for weeks. I feel like I know your dad, too. Bill, right? Your dad's name was Bill? I'm sorry, what did you say?
I try to do what I'm supposed to do.
I know you do. Your supervisor notes that you follow instructions perfectly. Your dad made you follow instructions, didn't he? I'm talking about the custody battle between your mum and your dad. Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Do you want to talk about how that felt? I suppose I don't need you to tell me it felt bad to have a parent scare you into saying things that weren't true. He manipulated you. It wasn't your fault. It's really sad, but it's common for one parent to use their child to hurt the other parent. I know your mum, after she lost the custody case.
I was supposed to be a good girl.
What happened to her had nothing to do with you, even though it was your testimony that did it. Was that testimony true? No, I didn't think so. But your dad is to blame, not you.
Also, I just want to say the therapists in these CDs recordings suck. I mean, this bitch literally just went, hey, we just met, but let's talk about your whole dad and how he abused and manipulated you until your mom unalived herself.
Who the f starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
These therapists are worse than the one in my old high school who literally yelled at me for being overly anxious and crying over my test scores. Just, you don't do that kind of thing. I honestly believe they wrote these therapists to be on purpose, because why the Anyway, Therapy and crap and pulling up things that are potentially triggering to their patient actually works with the theory of Vanny not having been a naturally forming or previously existing alter, simply because there's no hints or allusions to the possibility at all during her therapy sessions, because they would bring her up if she did exist. Granted, Vanessa could also just be very good at hiding it, but still, Vanny is clearly the result of Glitchtrap. So, how does me bringing up the Monty within it all connect to this? Well, think about what I said about the plot for a minute. And I know I said at the start of this video that this one wouldn't be heavy with summarizations, but believe me, I'm not going to cover the whole plot of the Monty within like I did for GGY or all the stories and epilogues regarding the Mimic. I'm just going to talk about the main meat. And that is, in the Monty within, as I said before, an AI version of Monty from a food fighting video game gets uploaded into Kane's head. The game is advertised to sync up with the player's brain to control a second character, which Kane read, but seemed to immediately forget, and he ends up breaking the whole setup trying to figure out how it works by pounding his fist on the mind link scanner above his head like a dumb. Anyway, this Monty AI then takes up residence in his left brain, which Kane had referred to his inner AI, the AI within, and has partial control over Kane's body at most times. However, despite being relegated to the left brain, there are a lot of times where the Monty AI is able to take full-on control of Kane's actions and what he says, with Kane having to fight for control back. Though I feel I should point out that the Monty's just as much as a dumbass as Kane, since it thinks that cutting their whole body in half on a saw blade will solve all their problems. Honestly, they deserve each other, now that I think about it. Anyway, Vanny can be viewed as an AI construct, much like Monty AI. One crafted by Glitchtrap and implanted into Vanessa through the VR game so she could more easily take the place originally held by Baby and Elizabeth in being a devoted daughter and follower who wants to make him proud.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
Which just further perpetuates the idea of Glitchtrap attempting to reconstruct William Afton's family, even if he doesn't have their souls to do so with. Because they've since moved on and are with Charlie and Cassidy in Ultimate Custom Night Hell, torturing the real William until the end of time. You can tell just by looking at their masks and everything on the blob, and I refuse to call this thing Tangle. It's more than enough to highlight that they're no longer there. All that's left is the agony, the very thing Henry had been trying to put an end to when he burned everything in the Pizza Sim location. Which, if you remember, is also under the Pizzaplex. Under the original pizzeria. Above the sister location bunker. Why? Why is everything built on top of one another, Scott? Why? Why is everything stacked? Anyway, that about covers what Glitchtrap's connection with Vanny is, and potentially what his plans for Gregory might be, as he does bear a resemblance to what we know the crying child looked like. Obviously it's not exact, but Glitchtrap ain't really going for one-to-one accuracy here, as Vanessa clearly didn't act anything like Elizabeth did, so he just rewrote her personality with Vanny. Anyway, here's where things get more theory crafty. Glamrock Freddy, when approaching the pit with the sleeping blob just before encountering Afton for his boss battle, recounts being used by her, which we can assume to be Vanny, to clear a path to something.
I know what this is. I have been here before. She brought me here. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I did not want to, but I had no choice. Now I have a choice.
Likely to the blob itself, because if you look at the blob's model, you'll notice something pretty significant. The OG Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica are there. Funtimes Freddy's mask stolen from the Pizzaplex Museum is there. Mangle is there. Baby and the puppet are there. Random antique endos and other burnt and melted looking cables and wires and parts are there. Because, obviously, this is what remained after the pizzeria sim fire. You know what isn't there? Afton's body. And this is why I firmly believe that the Mimic and Burntrap are separate entities, and I will continue to die on this hill until canon outright proves me wrong. Anyway, the Glitchtrap Mimic had Vanny use the Glamrocks to clear the way to recover what was left of William Afton's body. However, there was obviously not much left, just the skull and broken pieces of soup and some twisted metal.
This is a skeleton! This is bones!
But Vanny, taking some newer endo parts, managed to assemble what we see in the base game. And then Glitchtrap, through some kind of, I don't know, some way, we already know it can merge with people. And because of the remnant and agony left behind just within that skull and the pieces of suit, Glitchtrap in that moment stops being a mimic that simply believed itself to be Afton and fully becomes a pseudo-reincarnated version of William Afton through this melding of AI and the remnants of his soul that were clinging onto that skull after Henry's failure of ridding the world of the agony left by the murders he caused. If anything, all Henry did with burning everything was make it worse and more concentrated. He distilled all that agony and remnant into a more potent form, leading to what we have with the blob. And because it's the blob that has most of the agony and remnant, Burntrap doesn't have much of its own other than what it initially had. So what Burntrap Afton has isn't enough to fully bring himself back. He requires much more agony and remnant, more children killed by Vanny for his resurrection. Hence he looks as he does in the base game, and Vanny, by the time of the events the game take place, has already acclaimed a few victims for him. And you can tell by looking at his model. You can see the effects already starting with the veiny corruption from Dead Space-esque flesh growths winding all around his body. Some of it has even grown over the fingers of his right hand. Burntrap is Afton attempting to regrow his body around the new base Vanny provided him and is biding his time as she collects more sacrifices. And this is why the OG mimic in the basement can't be Burntrap or Glitchtrap, because then why would it be having Vanny do all this? Why would the mimic even need Vanny at all to do any of the things she does? Especially when in Ruin the mimic's only goal was to lure Cassie specifically in order to escape and potentially extractive revenge on Gregory for trapping it behind concrete again by killing her. Because remember, where we find the mimic in Ruin is much further down and beyond the original pizzeria location that it originally got spring locked in at the end of the Tales series. Hence the whole timeline I composed in part 2. There's the theory that since the other endings exist as comic art drawn by Gregory in Ruin never happened as a result, Burntrap himself isn't real, but his whole boss fight room and the blob exists. So it'd make more sense for him to have also been real rather than him to have not been, and this one entity is just a figment of Gregory's imagination all of a sudden, or just... Which, it can't be the mimic because human skull replacing... Anyway, what happened to him? Easy. He died. Nope, really, he died. With the Princess Quest ending being the canon one now, it's safe to assume that when the remnants of Glitchtrap and the arcade machines were slain, that the same happened to Burntrap. And honestly, I don't have the means to do it myself and have no clue if someone else has done it yet. But I really want a no-clip inside the recharge station pod that held Burntrap initially, just to see if his dead body is in there or something during the events of Ruin. It probably isn't, but it's something I'm curious about all the same. And even if it's not actually modeled in there, it's what I'm going to imagine. Just dead Burntrap slumped up against the glass. Anyway, that's really all I have to say for now for Glitchtrap and Burntrap, as well as Vanny and Vanessa for this video. It's about time I end it. I'll see you all next time I decide to put one of these together. I already have a few ideas lined up. Thanks to all of you who have listened this far, and...
See you soon.